Okay, so now we're going to move into our panel discussion around healing. So we're going to talk about healing after caregiving. And Kathy, I wonder if we could start with you, if you wouldn't mind talking about your relationship with your brother.
Yes.
And that relationship, what that relationship was like before and then after. And I'm just going to mute myself and eat my banana as you talk.
Sure, you're right ahead. Sure. So, I guess to start at the beginning, when my mother had been living with my brother and his wife, and then had to go into the hospital for a procedure, after which they did not let her back in the house. They basically, she ended up in assisted living, and she ended up in a nursing home. It turns out that basically she was having sundowners issues and things of that nature, and that they were concerned about having her back in the house. But they also have a very complicated relationship, I'll just say. So, it was a lot of things. So during the time that I was caregiver for my mother while she was in those facilities, my brother didn't have any relationship with her at all, except to drop off her meds once a month, because basically he was avoiding her, and whenever she saw him, she would just fly into a rage because she wanted to go home. So after my mother died, we have two older siblings. Also, my brother is younger than I am. But after my mother died, I mean, everyone knew that I had been the person who helped, who basically was taking care of her, taking her to the doctors, getting her supplies, all of those things. Although he did take a lot of credit for things in that period, and there was a lot of resentment on my part about that, and on my siblings' part, who knew that he was not the person who was doing that, and who also really had issues about the way my mother was sort of left the house and didn't get to go back to her house, because the whole time she was in facilities, as you can imagine, she just wanted to go home, was all she ever asked about. So actually it was doing grief work, actually, that I realized that, I think Bobbi mentioned this morning, that all the griefs you have are really like pile on top of each other. Like they're all really like connected in some way. And in one of the grief workshops I went to, we talked about, what were the big momentous things that happened in your life? And one of them was actually, that my family moved every few years and that he was born. And I realized at that point, it's a little more complicated than that, but the two older siblings did not move with us. We moved, and suddenly I had a younger sibling. So I was the baby of the family. Suddenly he came along, and sort of at that point, for which I've never forgiven him until recently, and he's 60, but really, it after I realized that there was like that whole grief relationship that he was a part of, and sort of understanding what his role was in the family too, and his role was in that whole grief situation, like we actually started communicating, and it turns out that he has an illness, and so we've been, in communication quite a bit about that. But I have to say, everyone in my family goes, "You're talking to him?" Because we really, we were never close. And suddenly we talked on the phone last night, so it really changed. I mean, I can't say that I try to understand what happened with my mother. I do think I understand more about it, but I think I've come to the point of really like letting that go, letting all that pain go, around what happened with her.
So what has changed for you because you now have a relationship with him?
Well, I don't know, it makes me laugh at myself more, Denise, because I actually can't believe that, I didn't talk to him for all those years, and suddenly here I am talking to him. It's like, well, you just never know, do you? But what has changed for me? I don't know. It's interesting. It's just kind of weird, but interesting. What was your question again? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. So how many years did you not talk to him?
Well, probably 11, like since she died, pretty much. Not that much while she was in the facilities either, except for like medication issues and stuff, but not that much. So maybe more like 14.
So, and I would imagine you never thought you would talk to him. It was one of
No.
those,
No.
yeah.
No, but it always seemed weird because of all of my siblings. Like one lives in California, one lives in Kentucky. He lives a half an hour away from me. You know, it was like, oh yeah, I have a brother. I keep forgetting about. Yeah.
So how close to healing would you describe that relationship with him?
Well, I have to say I'm not entirely unguarded in that relationship still, you know, because it had been the way it was. And we were never close growing up either. So it's a whole, you know, there's a whole lot of time that we were like parallel, but not really intertwined. You know, I just take it one day at a time. You know, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. I feel like I do still have my antenna up, like, okay, what's going to happen? But so far things have been okay. You know, he's helped us out in a couple of ways, which is nice. So my sense is that he's trying to repair the relationship as well. He did bring up my mom last night and family members who were angry at him, and I actually felt like I couldn't go there. So I'm not ready to go to that place yet, I guess.
Okay, you just never know. You just never know. So,
Well, I imagine he has some healing to do around that also, but I'm not ready to be the person that helps him heal around that.
okay, there you go. So a boundary.
I have to say, if I can just take a few moments, the relationship that I had to struggle to heal was with myself. And, you know, I mentioned before people saying you must be a saint, and I'm no saint. And this is hard for me to share, but at the time I thought I was the only person that ever felt this way. It's what I call a dark moment of the soul, where I was so exhausted and so depleted and having migraines, having panic attacks. My hair was falling out. I wasn't sleeping. I had reached rock bottom, and I thought, not only can I not do this, but it's killing me. And I thought, it's him or me. It's not going to be me. And I even went so far as to gather up some pills and consider ending his life. And I stood at his bedside with these pills in my hand, and I thought, I am not the person I thought I was. And I collapsed, and I threw the pills across the room. And of course, it took me probably over a year. And I sat my husband down. I said, I got to tell you something. I have to confess what I did. And he looked at me and he said, but honey, you didn't do it. You didn't do it. You're human. But that dark moment really rocked me to my core. How could I consider doing such a heinous thing to somebody who was so sick? And it took even longer for me to begin to share this story with groups like this. And surprisingly, a number of people said, I get it. I did it too. Now I look at some of you here who are still grieving your loved ones and who probably never would have had that thought. But talk about needing to heal. Even now it's bringing tears to my eyes that I considered that who am I? What kind of person am I who would think that?
So for me, I think of the courage around sharing the story as who you are. I think about the courage to sit down with your husband and say, this is what happened a year ago. That's brave.
No, I asked him to forgive me, and he says, there's nothing to forgive, Bobbi. I
So
saw where you
asked him to
were. I
forgive
saw
you.
what you did. It was easier for him to forgive that moment than it was for me.
Yeah, that's what I wonder about. So healing seems to be connected very much to forgiveness. So how did you come to a place of forgiveness toward yourself, Bobbi?
You know, each time I felt like a failure through that process, whether it was Mike or if it was the doctors that we were dealing with or the nurse that was assigned to us when he was definitely failing, each one reminding me of my own humanity and that your thoughts are not your actions.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Now, being raised a Catholic, when we were taught, if you think about a sinning, you might as well have done the sin. But, you know, but we're also taught to resist sin. So it could have been a moment of grace as opposed to a moment of deep failure, because this awful temptation came to me and I stepped away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious how you guys define healing.
Learning to live with the scars.
Yeah, there you go. And finding a new sense of wholeness.
And feeling more whole than broken.
Oh, okay, right. More whole than broken. So if we were to think about grieving as this healing process, we could think about what's broken as we grieve. So what breaks for us during the grief process?
Our sense that in part for that we have any control.
Oh, right, right. Yes, we think we have all this control, and then we realize we really have none, right? That the sense of control is just an illusion. Magical thinking, I think Angel was talking about magical thinking earlier in the chat room, and our ability to control life and life's events is magical thinking too. Yeah. I think our heart is broken during grieving. Our future is broken. Our day can be broken. Our faith can be broken. We talked about that earlier. What else can break? Oh, safety too is gone. Yeah, safety, right? We're no longer safe in the world because the world proves to be an unsafe place for us.
I think your ability to plan for the future is broken too. I think it's harder to like have a vision for the future when you realize that it can change suddenly.
Right. So plans break too. And I suppose our rituals break too. So I'm thinking about the mother who wrote into the advice columnist that said, I have moments of grief during these family celebrations. So how we show up in celebrations is different, and how we celebrate the typical rituals are different. So how we think about holidays could be very different when someone's missing. So those break too. So no wonder grieving is hard, right? Everything breaks. We think about it as everything, but then you get specific to all the broken pieces and you think, oh my gosh, no wonder I'm exhausted. No wonder I feel depleted. No wonder I'm disconnected from hope. I have so much to rebuild. So for you guys, what felt like the first piece that you really focused on rebuilding?
Could you say it again, please?
What was the first piece that you felt like you focused on rebuilding?
For me, it was writing the book, Confessions of an Imperfect Caregiver, which is our story. And in the process, I had to make the decision to share the times that I failed. I did not put in there about that dark moment of the soul. I wasn't ready to share that at that point. But Mike and I had a discussion, and I said to him, there were moments in this process where you were a jerk, and I put them in the book. And I said, I'm putting my jerk moments in there. Can I put yours in too? And he said, absolutely, because if we're going to tell this story truthfully, we have to put it out there. So, and it's not that I'm promoting the book, but people have said, I really know you and Mike and Roger from reading this book. And I've had people say, I'm so glad I read it because now I'm doing this and I understand that it's okay to feel this way. But that reading and writing has always been how I process my emotions. So that was a natural step for me.
I think for me, I don't know what I want to call it, maybe independence, because the first thing I thought, one of the many, was when my mom died was, I have no one's approval to get now. Because I didn't realize how much I looked to her for approval and validation. And now it was like, oh, it's just me now. And I don't need that. And I never did, but I thought I did. And so I would say the past 6 months have been really like owning my own responsibility for things and not relying on her for that, you know.
I call those my Ghostbusters moments. Who are you going to call?
Yes.
So Jennifer, what was the first word you said about that?
Independence.
Oh, independence. Okay. I was thinking freedom too.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was complete freedom, but fear as well. Like, for example, I had a sort of an opportunity within my job that I had been delaying for a year because I knew that it would be hard to do while I was taking care of her. And then the last excuse was gone, you know? And so then I had nothing left to say, oh, I can't right now. And so I, you know, I did it, but it was scary.
Wow.
Yeah.
Some of my best solutions came after Ian died. And they're simple things like, why didn't I think of that before? This is such a simple fix. I think I can answer my own question. I feel like I've lost you. Okay. Okay. You're freezing up, so I'm going to stop.
Oh yeah, I can hear you. You're okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Good.
So I think I also can answer my own question, which is there was so much chaos in those years that I was caring for Ian, because I mean, things just got worse and worse and worse, and I had to rise to that occasion. So once that was gone, then my mind was free to come up with ideas, and that's what the solutions were. There were ideas, And that's something that I can say was good that happened. I read a wonderful article years ago, before it applied to my life, about being an adult orphan. And it drew the picture that your ship, and especially after your mother dies, you've lost your anchor. That's it. You are on your own for the first time in your whole life. And so now it's up to you to drift or to sail your ship. And that spoke to me. That helped me when my parents were gone, because I definitely felt adrift. Now I just hoist the anchor and sail.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Something I want to ask, and it's a little odd for me to ask this, so bear with me, but I wonder too about healing the full person who died. So I think about a memorial I went to a couple of years ago, and it was my sister's in-laws. And when they did the eulogy, it was the eulogy of saints. But that was not our experience with them in real life. And it was very interesting. And it's not the only time that's happened, where I sit and I think, wow, but that was just a little piece of who that person was. How do we reconcile the whole person? And I'm wondering how you guys have healed all the memories so that it's reflective of the whole person and not just the best piece of the person.
I keep a column. I keep 2 columns. You know, what was perfect and sainted, and what wasn't. And it helps me just remember.
Yeah.
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 I have the gift of encountering some wisdom before I needed it. My cousin, now deceased, was a therapist, family, marriage, and bereavement. And she just once said, and I can only paraphrase, that in all the people she's seen and helped, that the only women who have perfect husbands were the widows. They only remembered the good stuff. And so they really missed the saint. My husband was really good, but he wasn't a saint. And so I tried just to balance and remember the whole person. And I still cry. I still miss him like crazy. But I'm not thinking I lost some kind of perfection. He was human. And humans die.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Humans die. Right. Yeah. How about for the rest of you? How did you heal the whole person? Good and bad.
I really liked in my father-in-law's service. It was kind of informal, and basically everyone was just allowed to come up and like share stories. And one of his cousins shared this hilarious story about my father-in-law that I had never heard before. And I can totally see him being rowdy youngster doing this. And it was just funny to hear the different stories from different parts of his life that I hadn't necessarily heard before. That weren't always like 100% positive. Like it was, I think because it was not formal, people were just speaking from their heart instead of like their scripted, sainted thing, an essay they have in front of them. And I felt like that was really helpful, and it really made me think about like future services and like kind of bringing the spirit of that to the more than the whole formalized piece.
And you know what I think is interesting? So the memorials and the funerals that I've been to where they share something that I know not to be real, I think in many ways disrupts the healing process. So another service that I was at, it was my mom's cousin, and it was for their father, I believe, who was really just a horrible human being. I mean, everybody knew that he was horrible, but during the memorial service, they talked about him as if he was this great man. And it just seemed to be moving into denial about who he was. And I think if you're in denial about who someone is, it's hard for you to heal from the loss that they are no longer in your life. And there's something I think that's powerful to say, honestly, he had challenges, and I'm going to forgive him because I think of him in this way. Because I think the denial gets in the way of healing. So how have you worked through denial around a situation or a relationship or even a loss?
I think my whole family enjoyed it when I shared during her eulogy how she used to mistake my brothers for Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, what the hell are you doing now? Because, you know, she had 6 kids and we all had she had a large number of grandchildren, and, you know, everybody's talking about how great she was, how perfect she was. And I was like, yeah, she often forgot, you know, mistook her sons for Jesus Christ. She would pull out the spatula to spank us. You know, if she had a Coke bottle handy, you know, watch out. And those, I think, are some of the favorite things that people remember when they're talking about when mom passed.
Yeah, and I think about my grandmother, my father's mother, who really was, she was not mentally well. I'm not sure exactly what her diagnosis would have been, but she was not mentally well. And as she was dying, we were in the hospital room. I was with my parents and then my uncle and aunt. And my uncle said, as my grandmother was dying, I'm trying to think of something nice to say about her, and I can't think of anything because she was so difficult. And then my father gave an eulogy, and he didn't talk about her. He talked about everybody else in the family but her. And I often think, you know what, it would have been really refreshing if he had just said, my mother was tormented with mental health issues. I understand that now about her, and I feel so much better that she is now free of those challenges and that hopefully she is a whole healed person. To me, that would have been really refreshing rather than just dancing around the elephant in the room, which was that she was a very not well woman. So it speaks to, I guess, how do we want to be eulogized? And it goes back to that question of what's our legacy? What are our actions that will define our life? So I just want to talk quickly about one last piece of healing. And this is something that Regina has talked about, which is during the pandemic, our healing rituals have been put on hold. So typically going to a memorial or having some kind of ceremony or ritual is not possible. And I'm wondering how you guys have been working through any kind of closure around which rituals that has been put on hold because of the pandemic.
Zoom funerals are not satisfying.
Yep. Jennifer, how did you honor your mother after her death?
We did not have a funeral, and we still haven't had anything. And I still have her ashes. She has a place in a cemetery, and I haven't taken them there. So partly because I can't figure out what I want to write on her gravestone. It needs to be right, and I haven't figured it out. So I didn't need a funeral. I was exhausted, and I was thrilled I didn't have to plan one. It was actually a relief for me. But I feel guilty because she didn't have that to honor her. But I actually like to believe that she's okay with it. You know, I do, whenever I've done this now twice, I make these slideshows that tell the story of my parents' life. I did it for my dad and my grandpa, and I do plan to do one for her. But it's just, I'm still tired, you know, like I just need time before I will be able to do it.
And how accepting of that are you, meaning that you need time?
I think I'm getting there. I was really feeling a lot of guilt for a long time. Because I would see everyone else doing these Zoom funerals. And I was like, well, you know, and people were asking, are you doing a service? And I was just like, no, it's to be determined, you know. If you have pictures, if you have stories,